Chapter 2 of the book Up from Slavery, written by it's the autobiography of Booker T. Washington. Excuse me. Chapter 2 is called Boyhood Days. Booker T. Washington's book Up from Slavery. Just a brief summary. So he begins the chapter. If you remember chapter 1, he talked about at the end of the chapter how the slaves were freed. And he says that in chapter 2, he starts off talking about how many of the slaves couldn't really believe that they were free. So they actually they left the plantation for like a week or 2 weeks, went out and party, whatever they did, they just moved somewhere else just to really feel like, hey, they were free. And then they came back. He said many of the slaves actually, though, when they got back, they formed contracts with the former slave owners so that they could just stay there. Maybe they worked for them, or maybe they had some type of rent agreement. During the time that they were in slavery, Booker T's mother had met a man, and they had gotten married. And so this guy went and found work in West Virginia. Okay, and he sent for the family. Booker T says that the mother took, him and the siblings. They walked, actually. They put everything in a carriage, and they were pulling it, and they actually walked from where they were at to West Virginia. He said it was like 200 or 300 mile walk. Took a couple weeks to get there. They just slept on the ground. Mother cooked like in the open air of the woods and the forest. So when they finally got there, they went to a area in West Virginia. There was like a village with like log cabins. They had a little log cabin there. He says it was worse living there than it was in living on the slave quarters. It was very dirty, filthy. He says that the stepfather worked in a salt mine. Okay, and he also took Booker T and him and his brother, excuse me, and they worked in the salt mine with him. Put them like in one of the furnaces, and they worked there because they were able to earn him more, like make more money. The little area that they lived in, there was like other log cabins around. There was white people and black people living there. He says it was very dirty, not very sanitary. People were drinking, gambling, fighting all the time, getting in quarrels, doing all kinds of stuff. Just like a kind of no laws there or whatever. He says that one of the big things that blacks had at that time is they had an intense desire to learn. He says that he had an intense desire to learn. He said that no blacks in the area could actually read. Nobody could read. So they wanted to start, they knew that they had to start learning. They wanted to start their own school, which is the first school in that area for blacks. They didn't have a teacher. So what happened was some guy moved there. He was a former soldier, and he had a lot of knowledge. So the community got together and decided to ask him to be the teacher, and they would pay him and then provide like a place for him to stay. Okay, so they started a school for the black kids. Booker's family, decided that it wasn't, learning was nice to learn, but that they needed money, so they kept him in the mines with the father. And then at night, his mother bought him like some kind of spelling book. He would intensely study that at night after leaving the mines. They had also got the teacher to like agree to give him a few lessons a week, like at night. A couple problems that he said he saw. Finally, his mother gave in and let him go to the school that they had started. He said a couple of the problems that he had when he went to the school was that he noticed that all the black boys were wearing like a hat, and he didn't have a hat, so he didn't want to feel left out. And he couldn't afford a hat. Like most of the boys had a hat from the store, and he couldn't afford that. So his mother made him a hat, and he said it was like one of the most proudest things he ever had was the hat that his mother made him. Another problem he had is that he noticed like when they were doing attendance or roll call, most of the boys had like a first and last name. So he had known that his name was just Booker, and then he had remembered that his mother had called him Booker Talafiero. And so when the teacher came around and said, "Hey, Booker, what's your name?" He said Booker Talafiero Washington. So he had added Washington, and that just stuck with. That's how he got Booker T. Washington. He went to school for a while, but then he said he had to quit school and go back to work. His father just couldn't lose. His stepfather couldn't lose the income, so he continued with the night school lessons. His father then put him in like a coal mine, and he said that was very dirty work. He kind of dreaded it because it was dirty. It was scary. He got lost a lot of times in the mines, and then he kind of ended the chapter with a couple of things he was talking about. He talked about a couple of things like success. He said he learned in his life that success is not about the position you rise to; it's about the obstacles that you overcome to get there. And he also ended. He said in most cases, with a few exceptions, Negro youth have to work harder to get recognition than whites. And that's kind of what that chapter was. That was chapter 2 of Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. Thank you.